the distinction is this. What they're trying to say is I went there for a political mission to kind of get Joe Biden in trouble. Ridiculous. I went there as a lawyer defending his client. I've known about this for 5 months. I've been trying to get people to cover this for 5 months, so I knew it would be very, very hard to get this out. And when I'm talking about this, it's Ukrainian collusion, which was large, significant, and proven, with Hillary Clinton, with the Democratic National Committee, a woman named Chalupa, with the ambassador, with an FBI agent who's now been hired by George Soros, who was funding a lot of it. When Biden got the prosecutor fired, the new prosecutor, who Biden approved, you don't get to approve a prosecutor in a foreign country unless something fishy is going on. The new prosecutor dropped the case not just on Biden's kid and the crooked company that Biden's kid worked for, Burisma. That was done as a matter of record in October of 2016 after the guy got tanked. He also dropped the case on George Soros' company called Antac. Antac is the company where there's documentary evidence that they were producing false information about Trump, about Biden. Fusion GPS was there. Go back and listen to Nellie Orr's testimony. Nellie Orr says that there was a lot of contact between Democrats and the Ukraine. Well, I have all the contacts. And John, when the rest of this comes out, and we look at China and the 1.5 billion that the Biden family took out of China, while that guy was negotiating for us, this will be a lot bigger than Spiro Agnew. They have fallen into a trap.
On this episode of Just Informed Talk, did President Trump masterfully manipulate the deep state into deploying one of their own secret weapons against themselves in the form of this latest Ukrainian scandal? Now, why do I say that? Because we're going to take a look at who the whistleblower may actually be, who they are connected to, and what is coming out with the connections between Joe Biden, his son, and Burisma Holdings is so much less than what we have. There is so much more. It's just the tip of the iceberg. You guys are going to want to stick around and check out that and a whole lot more. Hi, I'm Craig, and welcome to another episode of Just Informed Talk. Look, you guys know the drill. Come here, click the big red subscribe button if you haven't already. Make sure you hit the bell for notifications so you get notified when these videos get published. We always look over at the Q board. Here, we are still at QPost 3570. The 8chan website is not back up yet. As soon as it is back up, you guys will be the first to know because I will be publishing the content here on this channel directly after it's posted over there. Then when we get to that, there's going to be a lot to go over. But look, we're going to go over a story today that's so big. We've known about it. Q warned us about it. This is a part of the declassification. It all ties back to Dan Coats. It all ties back to the identity of this secret whistleblower who's come forward against President Trump with this whole Ukrainian fiasco, making all of these wild allegations against him. And the fact that we are here now looking at this is a big deal. You guys are going to want to stick around and talk about that. Plus, we have a bunch of other stories that we're going to get into. Before we get over into that, I always remind everyone to come here, watch these videos, share them on your social media. Why do I do that? You guys know they are suppressing this content. Now, the one thing that they did is it seems that they've purposefully now publicly hidden the amount of subscribers that are on each of these channels by putting it in these 230K. Now, I can see on the back end what's happening, and it is very, very interesting to see the drop in subscribers on a daily basis right after they implement this system, which in my opinion is meant to suppress content creators on YouTube. So there have many different ways they're going about it. There's algorithmic suppression. They're blatantly doing it. They were going to take away the verified checkmark on this channel, but then they had to change and turn tail and run on that one really quick. But the point is, you guys have to help share these videos. So there's a share button at the bottom of this video. Go click it. Get this content out there. If you scratch it, go, what is QAnon the Great Awakening? Please watch this video. Share it on your social media. That's my my pitch to you guys to always get this content out there. Now, today, this is where we're going to start. Greta Thunberg. I don't know what her name is because they keep misspelling it everywhere. It's Thornburg, not sure. But what I do know is that this is a 16-year-old girl who we're not going to go after here on this channel. But what we will say is that this article that just came out from the Gateway Pundit is very interesting. Now, she's at the UN, crying about how somehow everybody who uses a car with gas or hasn't, radically decided to basically bankrupt our economy overnight and switch from every thing that we have that's petroleum-based products, from the plastics that we use to the clothes we wear to the makeup that you wear, everything, to get rid of all that overnight and just somehow move to a completely solar green society, whatever it is, right? That somehow we're shattering her dreams and destroying her life, which, I mean, in all fairness, this poor girl, you listen to her talk today in her speech, she definitely believes what she's saying. Now, whether or not she's been completely brainwashed and indoctrinated by the people surrounding her, that's a whole nother story. Now, one of the interesting things that was pointed out here is that the official escort for her is this big time George Soros connected player. Now, who is this person's name? Her handler seems to be this Louisa Marie Neubauer, and she's connected to this organization called One Youth Ambassadors. And what they do is, or they have a connection to Bill Gates, Melinda Gates, George Soros, a bunch of others. So remember that these are all connected, and this is all part of the globalist agenda. This is all part of a campaign of indoctrination. It's all part of brainwashing. I mean, the fact of the matter is that everything that these climate activists are pushing, especially these extreme ones, people like those working with and around Greta, they're the ones trying to convince us the world is ending, that there's an existential threat. They've convinced millions and millions of children across the world that their lives are going to end because of climate change, which in and of itself is a form of fascist indoctrination. You have Barack Obama here with Greta having a conversation about how, they're really recognizing that her generation will bear the brunt of climate change. She's unafraid to push for real action. She embodies our vision at the Obama Foundation. I'm sure she does. A globalist future where there are no sovereign countries and everyone submits to a global oligarch of tech companies, corporations, and corrupt political leaders. I'm sure that's the future that is going to be shaped by young leaders like her, in my humble opinion. If you go read this, there is a very fascinating thread. Now, the Gateway Pundit actually cites this specific thread for the article, which is somebody named Wide Awake Q Army Swiss Division. And besides documenting the fact that it alleged in this thread, Thunberg, whatever her name is, her family is connected to the Freemasons and has ancestry that's all connected back to the Bavarian Illuminati, and I think it's the Russian Rockefellers. There's a lot more to this, and I'll leave a link to this thread if you want to read through it. But some interesting facts are that this is very similar to propaganda that was put forth in Germany and in Maoist society. So remember this. So here's a picture of what you would call a Nazi youth. And then you would see Greta here. It's kind of the same visuals. Obviously, the one eye. That's all symbolism. Now, I'm not saying any of this is true. This is obviously somebody's opinion. I'm just showing you. But what they do point out is this is how it happens. In every one of these communist movements, these fascistic authoritarian movements, what they do is they go after the children. Mao went after the children. That was what the Mao brigades were. They were just packs of rabid kids, basically, roaming the streets, grabbing all the intellectuals and forcing them to submit to the party or suffer the consequences. Now, that's what we're looking at today. These people are indoctrinating the children to make them believe that there's a life and death emergency happening, and if they don't act, then they will become victims of this existential threat, which can't be named other than a vague warming of the planet, which somehow will cause tornadoes to come chase people down in the streets. I'm not sure how it works, but they seem to believe it. And if you look at it, this is very similar, like I was pointing out here, with what happened with the Mao brigades. It's all very similar if you look at it in its entirety. You can read through this thread and understand, but you see how they have these kids like doing dances and moving in unison. This is all a part of the cultural indoctrination, right? They even use the X symbol with their arms kind of crossed like an X. That is literally the symbolism from George Orwell's 1984 and what the symbol they would do with their hands, right? you can read through this. This is a fascinating read, and it kind of pulls it all together and begs a few very interesting questions about how this all happened. Now, here's something interesting. They talk about, you hear politicians talk about, we have a crisis. This is an emergency. This is an existential threat. We're going to all be dead in 10 years. This is like our World War II. This person, Dr. Margaret Klein Salomon, is one of the main catalysts for the structure behind this movement to try to indoctrinate. Now, this is a philosophy that's been around for a long time, so it's not her. She's just a re-embodiment of it, where she's coming out and saying, we need to push the rhetoric that this is an emergency, that this is life and death, that this is a World War II level event, and that if we don't act, then people will actually end up losing their lives by the whatever number. Now, this is all, in my opinion, a part of a cultural Marxism indoctrination into this group thought, this idea of globalism. And this is how they sell it. They don't sell it to the people who are old enough and wise enough to read and understand the facts as they are. They sell it to children. They sell it to, the liberal education system, or the liberal educators, who then indoctrinate their classes and then push them onto the streets and tell them that the world's going to end in 12 years. I mean, if you tell a 10-year-old kid the world's going to end in 12 years, you could imagine the kind of terrified children you have running on the streets. And then you have, of course, Greta testifying in front of Congress and crying her eyes out. And it gets worse and worse. Now, this is all coming out as we continue to unfold more information about Jeffrey Epstein, his connections, and what that whole alleged blackmailing ring was all about. Well, what was it all about? Apparently, according to this article, there's a person who used to work for the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office, who was supposedly a whistleblower, came out, John Mark Dugan, who ended up running away to Russia to claim asylum. And he claims he has information and dirt on Prince Andrew that's going to expose these people. So you can imagine the kind of blackmail. Now, the story with Dugan, the former Palm Beach County sheriff who tried to expose the sheriff of Palm Beach County, Rick Bradshaw, who then ended up taking asylum in Russia. His story is pretty simple. He was a sheriff back in 2005 when they started investigating Epstein. He claimed to have evidence that nobody knew about. He resigned in 2009. He fled the United States in 2016, and he went to Russia. So that's about all we know as far as his story. But he makes these big claims to have this unseen evidence about Prince Andrew, and this is a very big time for a big time to be concerned about how this is all interrelated, especially globally speaking. So we have to keep an eye on that, especially given this is what's coming out. So Rudy Giuliani, and we're going to get into this. This is the big story, okay? This is Rudy Giuliani talking about the $3 million payment to Biden's son from Ukraine to Latvia to Cyprus to U.S. when prosecutor asked Cyprus for amount given to son. He was told U.S. Embassy, Obama's instructed them not to provide the amount. Prosecutor getting too close to son, and Biden had him fired. So this is something we already know, but let's dive deeper into the details, because details matter in all this. Because I remember going back to 2016, where I was actually reporting on the connections between Christopher Hines and Devin Archer and Hunter Biden and their practices in Ukraine, and now what's coming out in China. Why is this all important? Well, it's important because this is a part of the declassification. This is going to expose how these big networks were working together against President Trump, and they were using foreign intelligence officers and foreign assets to attack President Trump. And in this case, it's uncovering the fact that allegedly the Ukrainian government was involved in manufacturing the false evidence which was used to frame President Trump in this whole Russia coup, right? So you can't make this stuff up. It gets more and more complicated the deeper we go, but let's simplify it. What Rudy Giuliani is saying is that when Joe Biden made that threat against the prosecutor in Ukraine, what he was actually doing was he was trying to remove the prosecutor who was in charge of investigating the connection between a $3 million payment that was made to Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, and the Burisma Holdings, which is a very corrupt company that was under investigation there in Poroshenko's Ukraine. Now, this is back at the time when President Poroshenko was the head of the country, and they were the ones who didn't want to fire the investigators or the prosecutors, and this is how we've gotten where we are now. Don't forget that Hunter Biden was active in this company called Bohai Harvest, which merged with his Rosemont Seneca Partners. Now, what was Rosemont Seneca Partners? Rosemont Seneca Partners was an organization that Hunter Biden had basically founded with Christopher Hines, who was the stepson of, you guessed it, John Kerry. And they worked with a man named Devon Archer, who was recently, believe it or not, Devon Archer was working on a deal with them. But apparently, let's go back to this story here, and then we'll get into it. We'll talk about Devon Archer in a second. How did this deal all come to be? Well, they were working together at this company that they had started together, Rosemont Seneca Partners. Then Rosemont Seneca went to Rosemont Seneca Bohai, which was connected to this Bohai Chinese firm, and then it's connected back to Burisma Holdings, a Ukrainian gas company that was at the center of this UK money laundering probe. So Biden and Archer's companies paid them over $3 million. And what Rudy Giuliani is talking about when he's talking about this $3 million payment is the fact that you have one guy, Devon Archer, who right here was actually found guilty in connection with this Ponzi scheme of a Native American tribe that ended up with him in a U.S. district court in Manhattan with an Obama-appointed judge by the name of Ronnie Abrams, who decided to overturn that conviction against Devon Archer in his relation to that. He had helped run a scheme to defraud a Native American tribe, multiple pension funds, through the issue of $60 million worth of tribal bonds. So you have to understand, these people are all covering for each other. They're all involved in the same very nefarious things. And this is just one thread to go down. But if you come back and you kind of look at what they uncover here, this all just continues to point to the fact that this Burisma Holdings and this Bohai Harvest investment company that are both connected to Hunter Biden were involved in much more than you originally see. What they talk about with this Bohai investment company that was also Hunter Biden was, associated with, where we talk about Hunter Biden getting the $1.5 million or billion, from the Chinese government. Why would they get involved with that kind of money with Hunter Biden? Well, because he was establishing the contacts, allegedly, which were being used then to infiltrate the tech companies, to infiltrate the defense companies, to go and to broker the deals which would sell some of our nation's top secrets to the Chinese. Now, whether they did that knowingly or unknowingly, I can't tell you, but I can tell you that that's what it looks like, and that's just allegedly from what you can see here. So I'm pointing that out, and you can read through this. It's a very long thread. There's a lot of information here, a lot of stuff to kind of just to take in, but never forget that this was all about deals that were made with these countries, with the family members of high-ranking politicians in the United States. And you have to ask the question, with everything that we're learning from Q about these individuals and what they were involved in, would it not make sense that certain information was being sold, certain tech was being given, certain influence was being put over certain individuals who were given huge contracts, millions of dollars, billions of dollars in some cases? You have to start digging deeper, and you have to ask yourself, if the Democrats refuse to investigate this, it's like Rudy Giuliani is saying here. I want to go through this. Okay, Rudy Giuliani's tweets. Did Obama know that his VP, the one he put in charge of giving billions to Ukraine, had a son who was making millions on the board of one of the most corrupt companies in Ukraine? Biden's boss had stolen $5 billion from Ukraine and was a fugitive. Did Obama know? Did he approve? These are good questions. Also, Biden's scandal is only the beginning. Lots more evidence on Ukraine, like today's money laundering of $3 million, 4 or 5 big disclosures. Also, the $1.5 billion China gave to Biden's fund while Joe was, as usual, failing in his negotiations with China. And then it says, if the Dem Party, this is important, doesn't call for an investigation of Biden's millions from Ukraine and billions from China, they will own it. Biden's made big money selling public office. How could Obama have allowed this to happen? Will Dems continue to condone and enable this kind of pay for play? I have to ask these questions in complete agreement with Rudy Giuliani here. I have to ask those questions. I think we as the people, we the people need to ask those questions. They're important. Not to mention, you have a former Ukrainian Secret Service official that has come out and leaked info on how Ukraine seemed to fund Clinton campaign with stolen IMF, International Monetary Fund money. So this guy Vasily Prozorov is a former employee of the Ukrainian Security Service SBU. On his blog Ukraine Leaks, he reveals how former Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko, oligarch Viktor Pinchuk may have helped divert IMF funds to Hillary Clinton's 2016 presidential campaign. So this guy's a whistleblower who came out and said this. Former Ukrainian, or this is quoting the story, saying, former Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko was terribly afraid, or actually, excuse me, this is a direct quote from Prozorov. So it says, former Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko was terribly afraid of a Republican victory, believing Donald Trump would change Russia policy and lift sanctions, reducing support for Ukraine and robbing Poroshenko of his Western power base. So remember, they were trying to make sure President Trump would lose because they had a sweetheart deal with the United States through all these backdoor bribes. So they were doing everything they could to make sure President Trump wasn't elected, right? Prozorov writes, Ukraine Gate is a criminal conspiracy of representatives of Hillary Clinton's campaign and the leadership of Ukraine in the person of Poroshenko aimed at preventing Donald Trump from winning, unquote. Quote, at that time, I worked as an SBU HQ in Kiev, says Prozorov. I remember the panic that gripped the power structures in Ukraine after Donald Trump's victory. They expected immediate retaliation from Washington for Ukraine's participation in the attacks on Trump. Many politicians deleted the social media posts criticizing Trump. However, as it turned out, the phony Russiagate witch hunt kept the Trump campaign from doing anything that could look like collusion or obstruction abroad. Now, however, Ukraine-Gate conspiracy is starting to unravel. So right there gives you everything you need to understand about where's the motive? Why would Ukraine do everything they could to shut down President Trump to make sure he wasn't elected? Well, obviously, they had all these sweetheart deals. They'd given millions of dollars and all this. They've taken billions of dollars from Biden in order to create these sweetheart deals. They didn't want to lose that. So they did everything they could to come after President Trump. But then when President Trump won, they thought they were going to basically have the retaliation, but it never came because you had our own fake news and our own deep state attack the president from within and try to launch this coup. Now we're looking at the coup 2.0, where you have these corrupt people coming back around and saying, well, now it's President Trump's obviously committed another high crime by talking to the Ukrainian prime minister about investigating this corruption, or the Ukrainian president. So there's so much more here. It goes on to talk about how Ukraine financed Hillary Clinton. When they talk about this potentially damaging information on Trump campaign employees, they were also not just assisting the United States in setting up those people, they were also engaged in allegedly this vast operation to funnel money from the IMF through these loans into the Clinton coffers, which were then redistributed back to Hillary Clinton and President Poroshenko and the rest. So it breaks it down all here. I'm not going to go through the whole breakdown. I'll leave the link for the article if you guys want to read it and try to figure it out for yourselves. But now on to the main event. Trump's former number 2 spy chief, the one who was working under Dan Coats, her name was Sue Gordon, who was just happened to be a best pal of John Brennan, the raisin-faced turd muffin himself. She is the newest in the alleged who is the whistleblower game, I guess, that's going on. Everybody is saying that it's her. Now, why does it make sense? Her official resignation when she stepped down from office came after she was informed by the then director of national intelligence, Dan Coats, that she would not be selected by President Trump for that office that she had wanted. This one right here, the New York Times obviously reporting that they won't let her become the new director of national intelligence. Now, she is deep state as it gets, Coates is deep state as it gets, and Brennan is deep state as it gets, so is Clapper and the rest. But you got to remember, these people, they have these levers of control and they have these gatekeepers in place for a reason. When President Trump took office, there were a lot of people he had to make deals with. He had a lot of people he had to work with that he wouldn't have otherwise wanted to work with because they are basically holding our government hostage. and these individuals may or may not be involved. But I'll tell you this right now, Sue Gordon seems to be the #1 candidate for the whistleblower who has come out with this direct knowledge of the phone call of President Trump to the president of Ukraine. Why? What's her motive to get it out there? Well, it's the same motive we just went over. If connected to all of these deep state crimes that were happening under their watch, they would never want this information to get out there. I mean, if you just look at the simple fact that the connections between Burisma and Biden, and the connections between Biden literally going to the Council on Foreign Relations and saying, hey, I threatened the president, I'm going to take away this $1 billion loan if you don't, or $1 billion in aid or whatever it was, if you don't fire the prosecutors looking into my son's corruption and this corruption that's happening in these countries in these companies in your country. They're the ones who would know all about this. They're the ones who should have acted, and they didn't. That's why President Trump doesn't want them in control. And when she stepped down, it seems as though she was, according to the Washington Post, she made a subtle but significant protest against President Trump. And that in and of itself tells you everything you need to know about Sue Gordon. But the allegation is right now that she is the whistleblower. And her reasons for blowing the whistle in the way that she has come forward are self-evident. But I think, as I said before, she stepped down. Her official date of resignation was August 15th of this year. And the whistleblower officially filed these documents against President Trump, I think on August 12th of this year. So you could see there in and of itself, this was all a part of their exit strategy, just in case they had to come after President Trump. They had some backdoor way of doing it. This is their backdoor way of doing it. They've unleashed Sue Gordon against President Trump to say that, to make this whole Russia coup, now it's a Ukrainian, it's just another coup attempt. All right, so it's unelected bureaucrats in the deep state who are protecting their globalist handlers. They're the ones trying to manipulate the public through their control of the media and control of big tech and control of most politicians on the left. They're trying to manipulate the population into believing that President Trump has committed some impeachable crime by, looking into the corruption of Joe Biden. And it's just not true, but it's just another example of Democrats' projection and them basically doing everything they can to continue to muddy the water so that nobody can see what's actually happening. But that's where I'm going to go ahead and leave it. That was a big episode. I hope you guys got a lot of information. I'm sorry the episodes are coming out a little more sparsely last few days, but just catching back up. Been on the road, still catching up, trying to get as much of this content out as I can. There's a lot happening behind the scenes. You guys got to trust me on that. But that's pretty much going to wrap it up. A few more things before we go. Come here, click the big red subscribe button if you haven't watched these videos. Share them on your social media. That's an important way you help out. And comment below. Leave your thoughts, theories, and insights. I want to hear what you guys have to think about all of this because it truly matters to me. Now, also, don't forget to be brave. This is a great way to support Just Informed Talk. There'll be a link in the description. Click it to download the Brave browser. What is it? Google Chrome, Internet Explorer. It's another internet browser, except it does something great. It blocks the ads. Now, I don't know about you. Sometimes I go on websites. I can't even read the article because the ads are popping up. It's a great way to block all those ads and support the channel. It's a win-win. So use the link in the description and download the Brave browser. And you download it, you install it, and then you run it just like you would any other Internet Explorer. And it's a great tool. So I encourage you to check that out. Also, come check out JUSTINFORMEDNEWS.com, the official website for Just Informed Talk, where you get links to the Q stuff, different news websites, the breaking news, and of course the latest videos from the channel. So JUSTINFORMEDNEWS.com, go check that out. Also, you can find me on Twitter at JustInformYou, the official Twitter handle for Just Informed Talk's official Twitter page. We can have a conversation over here. There's a lot to talk about, and I think we should definitely get connected on Twitter. If you guys haven't already, come find me over there and give me a follow. That helps out big time. A couple of the ways you can help out are both financial. There's Patreon, Patreon.com. It's a crowdfunding website. You guys fund this channel. Look, they're not going to run any advertisements on here. YouTube's basically, since channels like mine and others have come along, they've rewritten the rules to game the system against us. So all the funding for this channel comes from you guys and your support. So here's Patreon. It's a crowdfunding website. It's a monthly donation. There'll be a link in the description. You click this button to become a patron. And look, your support keeps this channel alive. Thank you so much. I also have a GoFundMe set up. If you want to make a one-time or anonymous donation, that's a cool way you can help out. Links to both those will be in the description. Now, before we go, we do a segment at the end of each one of these episodes called God's Grace is Greater, where we talk about God's grace and how it is truly greater. Today, I want to share with you a very important verse about undeserved suffering. And as Christians, we have to come together and understand that there's a lot of suffering that happens in the world, and there's a lot of suffering that we cover that happens on a regular basis that we talk about here on this channel. But we have to bring a positive message to those who are suffering. And I don't know about you, but I need this message just as much as I think everyone else does. And I want to share this with you. This is out of 1 Peter. It's chapter 3, verse 13 through 18. I don't want to read these words to you. It says, "And who will harm you if you are passionate for what is good? But even if you should suffer for righteousness, you are blessed. Do not fear what they fear or be disturbed, but set apart the Messiah as Lord in your hearts, and always be ready to give a defense to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you. However, do this with gentleness and respect, keeping your conscience clear, so that when you are accused, those who denounce your Christian life will be put to shame. For it is better to suffer for doing good, if that should be God's will, than for doing evil. For Christ also suffered for sins once for all, the righteous for the unrighteous, that he might bring you to God, after being put to death in the fleshly realm, but made alive in the spiritual realm." Now, wow, those words, I hope they speak to your heart. I hope you understand that we must not fear what they fear or be disturbed by what is happening around us. Instead, we must set ourselves apart through the Messiah because we know he is Lord in our hearts. And we have to always be ready, it says here, to give a defense to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you. Why is that so important? It's important because we have to share the word of Christ with others. We are called to share the gospel. We are called to go into the world and say, God has saved me. He can save all of us. He has saved all of us. The sacrifice has been made on the cross for our sins. Your salvation is right there. And if you're far away from it, if you're personally new to this and you're not sure, look, just say a prayer, open your heart, reach out to God, and then share that with the rest of the world. And that's where I'm going to leave it. I want to say thank you guys for watching. Remember to come here, click the big red subscribe button if you haven't. Make sure you hit the bell for notifications and hit it, punch it, tap it, headbutt it, whatever. Hit the like button. If you guys like this content and want to see me make more, that's going to be it for me. Thanks for watching Just Informed Talk. My name is Craig. Godspeed and God bless each and every one of you, Patriots.